Hello gamers, family, and friends. I'm back with the second video in the top 75 games that I own. If you missed the first video, you can go back and watch it. I won't recap in case you want to watch it, but before I get into today's, which will be 65 through 56, because I forgot to get out Star Wars X-Wing for yesterday's video, I got out one of the X-Wings. See why I think it's pretty cool. Um, this is the X-Wing, if you don't watch Star Wars. It's one of the smallest ships in the game. I think it might be the smallest. But just look at the detail on that. It's pretty impressive. So, I think there is a reason why getting into the game is so expensive. The quality is pretty good, but like I said, the pay-to-play thing is not my favorite. So, getting into the games for today's list, starting with number 65, a party game, Geek Out. This game was bought for me in a auction for charity, and the name it's aptly named. It's probably the geekiest game that I have, and that's including Dungeons and Dragons, because the whole point of the game is to figure out how much of a geek you are. The cards have different categories on them, and basically it's a one-up sort of game where you try to prove that you know more, for example, characters of Lord of the Rings or planets in the Star Wars galaxy. And if you can do it, you get a point, and if you can't, you lose points. This is kind of a different take on the trivia sort of game, but there is really no right answer. It's up to everyone in the room, and that's where a bit of the pitfalls for Geek Out comes. If you don't have the right group, if you don't have a group of geeks, then this game's not going to be very fun. There'll be, I can name one sword in Lord of the Rings. I'm on Lord of the Rings. That's probably, you'll see. So, because it's so dependent on the group that you play with, that's why this is a bit lower on the list. Now, just a kind of a disclaimer for a lot of the rest of the games this round. These are some pretty generic games that probably everyone watching has played. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of how to play these games because you already know, but I'll go into some of the specific versions that I have. Alright, so 64, we have Checkers. Alright, if you haven't played this, then what rock do you live under? Specifically, I have Chicago Cubs checkers, and you'll see from the box that when your pieces are kinged, you get a nice little miniature Chicago Cubs hat, which I think is hilarious and adorable. Not too much to say about checkers. Very easy to pick up, as I'm sure you know, and very easy to teach. Next up, we have the monster that's on every shelf in America, in every home. Monopoly. Alright, listen to that. All the pieces just fall to the ground. That's fine. Everyone's played Monopoly, and everyone has their own take on the rules and whether or not they like Monopoly. Everyone at some point in their childhood has had a rainy day where someone brought out Monopoly, and it leads to fights and things like that. And I think from birth to about age 18, I don't think I ever actually finished a game of Monopoly, and it's probably because most of the time I was playing wrong, but I don't think, in a lot of cases, the game itself isn't worth the amount of time you put in it. But as you saw, I have Lord of the Rings Monopoly. I also have Spider-Man Monopoly and Star Wars Monopoly. I think it's just the prequels, so probably not the best one. But what I like about Lord of the Rings Monopoly is that the One Ring is included, and every time you roll Snake Eyes, the ring gets one step closer to Mount Doom, which is the boardwalk of this version, and you play until the ring reaches Mount Doom, and then the game is over. So I like that aspect of putting a time limit on a game that sometimes takes way too long. That's Monopoly. All right, 62 and 61 are very similar. They're from the same IP, basically. And this is kind of like Monopoly, where it is a little polarizing. Some people love it, it's their favorite, and some people hate it. I'm in the middling camp. The games that I'm talking about is Munchkin. 62 on the list is actually Munchkin Panic. Munchkin Panic is a cross between Munchkin and Castle Panic. In Munchkin Panic, you set up a castle in the middle of the board, and you and the other players work together to try to keep the monsters from destroying your castle. Sounds pretty straightforward, and it may not be the case for you, but when I played this game, I found it almost impossible to win. I felt like I needed to cheat over and over again in order to even get close to winning, and it just seemed impossible to me. Maybe I'm playing it wrong, but it just seems like every single turn you add more and more monsters, and it just gets overwhelming very quickly. On the other hand, Munchkin, alright, Munchkin itself, it is basically a dungeon crawler, meaning you make your way through a dungeon while you're fighting monsters. The twist in this one is that the monsters are often humorous, and a huge part of the game is take that. You have a lot of things in your hand that can help you, and you have a lot of things that can help the other players, but you also have things that can hinder the other players. And you have to decide whether you're going to be cooperative or you're going to be a jerk. And I don't really have a problem with that, but a lot of times games like that end up where one person ends up being the one who gets hindered more often than not for whatever reason. And sometimes it's in good humor, but sometimes it ends up where one player just simply isn't having a good time. And with the game structured around being humorous, if someone's not having a good time, then I don't think it really succeeds in its end goal. But Munchkin is a classic. It's been around for probably close to 30 years, if not more. It is worth your time as long as the people you're playing with aren't going to gang up on each other. The next game at 60, alright, should probably be lower on the list, but I can't help it. I love it. Seen It. Alright, the DVD game. All the rage back in the early 2000s when DVDs were first coming out. It is, of course, a movie trivia game, and if you know me, you know I have a problem, and I have too much movie knowledge in my head. I played this game a lot as a kid with my family, and that's probably why it's number 60 and not lower. It just opened my eyes to so many things about movies and casts and directors and things like that. And maybe it was just my kid glasses, but it seemed like no matter how often you played, you didn't get repeat questions. Now, as an adult, I see that it does repeat sometimes, but I don't think it's enough to deter from the fun of the game. And now, more often than not, I basically just turn it on to watch the movie clips because that's the best part. Number 60 was Seen It. All right. Another game that was a huge part of my childhood. Number 59, Apples to Apples. All right. Now, on the last video, you heard me talk about how much I dislike Cards Against Humanity, and it's probably because I played Apples to Apples so much as a kid, and just had so much fun with it, just doing stupid answers for the green cards, and just being a teenage boy, just laughing at the stupidest stuff. I have not played Apples to Apples in ages, but I am always willing to do it with anyone who wants to. I know all the cards by heart, basically, but when you play it, every game seems different because of who you play with. Apples to Apples. So many cards, too. Next, 58. This is a game that probably a lot less people have played, but it's still one of those. I think it's not Mattel, but it seems like one of those, or Parker Brothers. But it's one of those that you can just pick up at Target or Walmart. This is Imagine If. All right. If you don't know, Imagine If is a game where on the board you have a dry erase marker and you choose a few people that the people who are playing know. You can include the people who are playing, or you can include relatives, friends, whatever you want, and you get several cards. It says, like, imagine if Dylan was a pro football team. Which one would he be? All right, and then everyone votes, and if the majority wins, basically. So this is a game I keep around because it's an interesting creative writing prompt for my students. I make them write stories imagining if they were whatever the card says. I just saw that the slogan says it's the funniest game you can imagine. It does have some humor to it. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it's the funniest game you can imagine, but depending on the group, again, you can make it really fun, really hilarious. You use your imagination. Next is one that probably not a whole lot of people are familiar with. This is one that I have a lot of different additions and expansions to, or not expansions, but versions. It's Fluxx, and this one is Monty Python Fluxx. I also have Adventure Time Fluxx. They make things like Batman Fluxx. They have Space Fluxx. They have Cthulhu Fluxx. All sorts of things. Sounds like I'm swearing, but I'm not. Fluxx is a game that starts with one rule, and the rule changes throughout the game depending on what cards you play. So it fluctuates. That's where the name comes from. So a lot of the brandings and IPs on here are humorous because the game does tend to get out of hand. You start out with draw one card, play one card, but it could end up being draw 5 cards and play 4 of them. And the game is always changing. And on one hand, that's really fun and zany, and on the other hand, it can get too crazy. And sometimes it seems like the game's never going to end. But it just depends on what cards get drawn and where they get laid. So, if you want something crazy, try out Fluxx. Alright, well, I was hoping that this video would be shorter, but it's gonna be like 2 minutes shorter. We'll see. I like to talk. I don't know if you've noticed. Sorry. But we are to the last game of this video, and I just want to warn you, it's probably going to be a few days until I put up another video of the next 10 games. I got a busy schedule ahead, then I'll be out of town. But if you like what I'm doing, let me know. If you have any suggestions of what you've seen of games I might like, then let me know. But remember that I have 55 more after this. But if you suggest something that I own, then we will definitely play it. So just anything you have to say, let me know. Now, without further ado, number 56, another game from my childhood, is Mancala, also known some places as just Kala. According to Board Game Geek, Mancala is like 1,000 years old. I didn't know that. But really, this game, for how simple it is, it's a lot of fun. You start with holes in your board that are filled with 3 marbles, and you're trying to get them into your home. That's how you score points at the end. And you drop one at a time to get into your home. If you end in your home, you get to go again. And the person who collects the most marbles wins. It's very simple, but for whatever reason, I love playing it, and I love people's reaction when I beat them by like 1 marble. I don't know. It's probably the sadistic side of me, but I love this game. It takes about 5 minutes, and you can teach anyone. So, there we have the second group of 10 top 75 games. A lot of simple ones that you have probably played before, and some that may be new to you. From here on out, there should be a lot of unique games that I like a lot. So I hope you look forward to that. Well, I'll see you next time. Keep gaming.